stuff, clubs. So, okay, another weekly golf tips. Here's what we're going to be talking about today. Green reading. This is something that you don't need to swing grind on. It's basically something that you can do instantly. Obviously, as everything else, it does take some practice. It does take some feel. It might be a big adjustment to what you're currently doing. You might need to rethink some, potentially built-in habits or ways that you look at things. But nonetheless, if it's probably worth giving it a shot, just because in golf, and especially when you get to high-level golf, a lot of it has to do with probabilities and outcomes, because at some point, from a skill perspective, while everybody might be better in certain aspects, at that point, at a really high level, everybody's really good. So it's going to boil down to putts going in, of course, luck and good breaks, but in general, pros, high level amateurs, etc., a lot of it is probability. So when it comes to putting, and we want to talk about probability, green reading is a big deal. The first and foremost, of course, just like what Aaron said, is, and if you haven't watched that video, Aaron Walker, I've known him for 30 plus years. He's like a brother to me, but he's also happens to be an assistant pro at one of the most, prestigious golf courses out there. They've hosted a number of really high level professional events. So we're lucky to have him. But what he was talking about was speed and putting. That's unbelievably important, no doubt. This will help you, add on and tack on to that in addition, so that you can even be a better putter. But most importantly, on the green reading side, and then you're working on your speed control, the combination of the two is gonna give you the edge over your friends, over competition in a tournament, etc. So let's get right into it. So basically, what we want to do is, when we talk about green reading, we do have to understand grass. And this is like a whole nother subject. You could probably, if you talk to a really amazing short gamer, they're probably going to have a really deep understanding of the grass. And when you're talking about greens and looking at the way the grass is growing, it is important, especially as greens get better and faster. So if you're in the north, a lot of times it's not quite as grainy as maybe a person who's playing in the south or on Bermuda. Because Bermuda, oftentimes, it's very much about the grain and which way the grain is growing, and that's going to dictate, speed, how hard you hit it. It can dictate break. But let's just say, for example, that you're not on Bermuda and you're just in general. But anyway, circling back to grain, is when you're looking at a putt, and this is particularly for the most part outside 5 feet, it's important that you just at least understand and see whether or not is the grain, against you, is it to the side, is it down, etc. Because it can mean the difference of, half a ball right, half a ball left, half a ball long. And the more, predictability that you have on where the ball is going to go, the better opportunity you have to make it and or, be prepared. So when you're looking at a putt, just take a look at the grain, just to make sure that, nothing looks, hairy. So for example, if you're on a side putt and it's breaking right to left and it's downhill, what you might want to consider is, okay, is the grain also growing that way? And that might be a reason why you might actually borrow a little bit more from a break perspective, because if the grain is growing and everything is falling left, it's probably going to be slightly faster and it's probably going to break slightly more. So it's just something to keep in mind. So anyway, once we get past the grass and we see what's going on there, we want to factor in when we're looking at a breaking putt. And again, inside 5 feet around that area, there are very, very few, time periods where you're not playing it right in the hole. There's not a lot of pins that are going to be out there on a regular basis where you know, if you have this length of putt, you wanna aim outside the hole. I mean, it's certainly possible. It's just in general, the rule of thumb is that in that distance, unless, you know, it's straight downhill or on like a side hill or something really extreme, you want to hit it a little bit more firmly, and you want to take out a good amount of break, and you want to hit it in the hole. Now, obviously, if it breaks a little bit left, maybe you want to aim right center, left center, etc. But nonetheless, we're really referring to sort of outside, you know, maybe in the 10-foot, 7 to 8, 9, 12 or 15-foot range, where, you know, if you're hitting a lot of greens and you're getting in that, and some of them are inside 15 or 10 feet, if you're making those, or, you know, on a 20 or 25 footer, in addition to what Aaron was talking about with speed, if you're also getting, you know, the read of the green right, and you're getting closer, I mean, your putting can drastically improve, and you can make, you know, on putting, if your ball striking's off, what's going to save you is chipping and then putting. So anyway, when we're looking at it, we want to make sure that we're understanding, you know, the probability on what is likely to happen. So I've included a couple of videos of putting and just some examples. Now, I'm going to putt, and you can see here that when I putt and I aim slightly high, the ball tends to travel a little bit straighter, and it's just on the edge of this putt. So it kind of looks like it's going to break in, and it kind of just doesn't feed to the right, or in this particular case, the left. So did I hit a bad putt? No, absolutely not. I mean, I hit the left edge. I had a great speed. It just didn't break in. Then, as you can see, you know, putting on the other side, if we take it more at the hole. Now, granted, in this example, this is basically a pulled putt, but it still exemplifies what I would say is as you get closer and aiming closer to the hole, even though it could be an uphill, you know, to the side, to the left, let's just say. And even in that regard, as you aim closer to the hole, right, and you're taking out more break, and again, this is outside 5 feet, this is more like 10 or 12, 15 feet. You have to keep in mind, one, you're always going to have to hit it harder so that you can hit through the break, right? But what can happen is if you hit it closer to the hole and it's a breaking putt, and you either don't hit it hard enough and or you misjudge the break, what can happen is by the hole, it actually breaks more and speeds up, because there's your lower. So if we take a wall, right? So, and as you can see in this example, you know, the first putt, it basically stayed straight, just didn't break in. The second putt, granted I pulled it, but if you look at it, it was faster and went more left. And then again, the next putt, again, I'm aiming a little bit high, it stays straight. It's the same exact one as the first one, but if you notice the speed, it'll tend to die down a little bit more. So let's take a wall, let's take a luge example, right? If you're up on a wall and you go higher on the wall and it breaks, you will lose more speed going up this way, right? Because you're actually going more uphill, so you're losing more speed. Granted, it breaks a little bit more at the end, but it's still losing more speed. Versus if you're lower on the wall, right, you're going less uphill, right? So you're catching potentially less break, but there's less of a basically wall that the ball in this particular case, or the luge sled, is running into. So you'll actually gain more momentum, and you might break more off. So the takeaway here is, when you're looking at a putt, let's just say from 12 feet, and it looks like it breaks 6 inches, you might say, okay, I'm going to play this closer to the hole, right? And then we factor in, is it downhill, is it uphill, side hill, etc., grain. After we've done all that, and we go, let me play closer to the hole. What can happen is that's really going to boil down to a speed piece, where you're going to have to commit to hitting a little bit harder. And on one end, there's an argument that says you might make more of them, and it's possible that you will. The issue with that is you bring in more potential lip outs because you're hitting it harder, and if you're not consistent on basically hitting it firm, you could actually gain more speed than you think, and it breaks more below the hole, both of which basically don't ever give you the opportunity to make it. And you could be left with a 2 or 3 footer versus a 12 incher or 8 inches, something like that. Because if we missed the putt and we had a comebacker, anything inside 18 inches is going to be great. Plus that also tells us that that's make speed. You're not baiting it to the hole. Versus if you look at a putt and it's going to break, let's just say it breaks right to left, similar to my example, where when it breaks right to left, I'm playing it high. Now, I might get annoyed that it didn't break in, but at the same time, I hit a really good putt, I hit my line, and I'm also left with, a tap in. And the purpose is when the ball rolls in towards the hole, if you play it higher with maybe a touch less speed, you're going to do 2 things. One, if it's high and you get the break wrong, you do still give it the chance, right? Because it's high on the hole, it's high on the break. But the other piece is, if you miss it, even if you hit it a little firm, you're most likely gonna hit that wall where there's less potential run out, and you're gonna be closer to the hole, and you're giving it a chance. Versus if you hit it more towards the hole and you hit it harder, you have a potential of gaining more momentum and more break and being further away from the hole. So when it comes to green reading, we really want to consider probabilities. And the probability on something outside even 10 to 12 feet is less than 50%, quite a bit less than 50%. I don't know the tour statistic, but at the very least is less than 50%, like over, a large sample set. So when you're looking at it, you might want to hit it a little firmer, and if it's really straight or uphill, sure. But overall, the way to probably play, or the way to consider when you're reading the greens, is grain, how that's growing, and that can definitely dictate, a little bit to a lot of bit on how the ball is going to roll. And then 2 is, okay, if I have a more breaking putt that's going to gain speed, I actually want to hit it higher, or, maybe borrow a little bit much, and then the momentum of the ball and the momentum of the high side will actually slow the ball down more, versus if you play it right at the hole, it could actually gain speed and break more off than you think. So that's really what we're looking for. We're looking for probability and borrowing a little bit more. We're not talking about dying, but we're talking about borrowing a little bit more and playing the probability that says, 1, on the high side, you're more likely to lip in. That's a pro tip. High side, you're more likely to lip in. You can definitely lip in on the low side, but that implies that you're lipping in uphill, which is less likely. So the pro tip is, high side, you have more of a chance to lip in, and there's less likely where the ball gains more momentum closer to the hole that breaks further away, and you'll be left with what is most likely, a much closer comeback, because even if it's breaking more, it's going to break more, but it should slow down more, so you'll end up being closer to the hole. Thanks for tuning in. Next week, we're going to circle back to the next piece after the takeaway. Take care, friends.